Tupac's real father, Billy Garland, is not dead, and the picture that shows you the gratification and happiness that Tupac had when he found out that Billy Garland was his real father. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Yeah. Blackjack. Life is like a game of cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Yeah. Blackjack. To play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button, notification. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And most importantly, tell a friend. And also, if this is your first time watching the channel, do me a favor if you want to be notified when I drop some of the straight game, and hit that bell notification button right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. This question right here comes from one of the people that was in my comments. And the question was, DELRAY, could you please talk a little bit more about Tupac's relationship with his father, based on the fact that you've spoken with him, right? And I want to tell you this. Not being there when a person calls, but being there in a person's time of need, if you will, right? And so I understand that Tupac didn't really know who his real father was at that particular time, up until the hospital situation, right? But like I said, when you deal with that, you know, people who are watching this video, some people, you know, you might have grew up with a single mom, you might have grew up with just your dad, you know, and so on and so forth. And things happen in relationships, right? You know, we all are human. So whatever happened between Afeni Shakur and Billy Garland, you know, was just life. It was life happening. And so when they became estranged, Mr. Garland wasn't there, and for reasons, him wanting to find out, you know, where his son was and so on and so forth. From my understanding and talking to him on the phone, he could never do that, and he was communicating with certain friends of the family and so on and so forth. So he couldn't really, you know, they were supposed to be relaying messages and trying for him to get reacquainted with Tupac, right? And so the situation in New York happened when Tupac was shot at Quad Studios, right? And at this particular time, you got to understand, a lot of people in certain situations, as we've seen with other celebrities and high-profile individuals who grew up without their father there, you know, if they've had some success, their father usually comes out of the woodworks during the successful time of their career, and basically stating, or however it goes, that I'm your father, and so on and so forth, right? But if you look at Billy Garland's situation, Tupac's real father, if you look at his situation, how it happened, you could see that he was actually trying to get acquainted with his son. And it wasn't really about any kind of, you know, let me share in your success type of thing, if you will. From the perspective of when they first got reacquainted, which was at the hospital. And here's what Tupac had spoke on that. Here's what he had said. Here's some of the information and the statement that he made in regards to that, right? So now, when that happened, like I said, Afeni Shakur was at the hospital. And from what I understand, she basically, because they weren't letting Mr. Garland in at first, and basically the security guard himself had told Mr. Garland that Tupac's father was dead, right? And Afeni basically said, no, that is Tupac's father, and you can let him in. And so with that being said, when you understand that, there was communication there was, I think Tupac was very appreciative to find out at that particular time, at your most down moment in your life, that support system coming in. Like I said, you know, if no other time, that time, you know, when you laid in the hospital, you know, shot up, and he comes in and he says, hey, you know what, you know, I'm your daddy, you know what I mean? And, you know, he sought him out because he understood through the media what had happened and where Tupac was being held at now. You understand what I'm saying? Most people would say, well, he could have showed up in a court. I mean, he could have showed up at a concert. And so now, but that goes to the argument of not trying to show up and be like, oh, I'm your father. I see you doing well. You know, can you give me something? Can you help me out? And so on and so forth. You know what I mean? And seeking them out that way. But more importantly, when he's in the hospital shot up. Right? And like I said, Tupac spoke on that. So when you deal with that, you got to understand, you know, Pac's father wasn't always there. But like I said, when at his most time of need, Billy Garland showed up to be that support system. You know, whether I like it, whether you like it or not, these are the facts, right? And, you know, Tupac spoke on that. And so now, from what I understand, they kept in contact, they kept in touch. And so now Tupac was still like going to court for that situation in New York and involving that. Now, mind you, Tupac was also shooting movies and things like that. Mr. Garland didn't show up. You know what I mean? I don't know if he knew what the schedule was, what Tupac was shooting above the rim and all of that. But like I said, he didn't show up to that. And from that perspective, you know, I respect that. Like I said, once again. And so now we go fast forward a little bit, if you will, right? And then you go to the situation in which Tupac is convicted of those allegations, or should I say, the situation that was involving in New York. Like I said, I feel that didn't happen, and like I said, Tupac felt that didn't happen, and hopefully the truth will come out. But at any rate, he was convicted not of what they charged him for, but for a lesser, right? And so now Tupac is in Dannemora prison, in Clinton Correctional, or should I say Dannemora, New York, in Clinton Correctional Facility, right? And I want you to look at these photos. Look at these photos. That's Tupac. That's his wife at the time. That's Mr. Garland, and I'm not sure who the young lady is that Mr. Garland is hugging on. And then you look at this other photo with Mr. Garland and Tupac, right? And I want you to look at the smile on Tupac's face. Look at the smile on his face. You know, he's so happy, you know, because at that moment in life, at that moment in time, right? His father's there by his side to give him that support that he needs. Whether you like it, I like it, or anybody else likes it, for whatever happened in Tupac's life up until that point. I'm just looking at the picture right here and the smile on Tupac's face as he pointing at his father. Because now he knows, he understands what it is, and partially the reason why it was, for the reasons that him and Mr. Garland had talked about, you know, that situation. And so if you think about it, it would be, you know, from that time, I think Tupac did it was like 9 months, 11 months or something like that in prison, like 9 months or something like that. I'm not sure the actual time at this particular time, but then he gets out and he gets on death row, right? And it would be 11 months that he would be on death row, right? Before he's shot and succumbs to his wounds on September 13th. So for everything that was supposed to happen, it happened. You know, the first time. And I don't think a lot of people understand, like, yo, within 2 years, Tupac had been shot twice. I don't really think that, you know, hits on a lot of people's radar, you know, like, yo, in 2 years, this dude was shot twice, you know. That's like, you talk about living in a war zone, or feeling like you're living in a war zone from that perspective, right? So you can imagine the first time he was shot and then he survived what he had felt. I wouldn't say invincible, but he felt like, yeah. And he expressed so much so in his song, you know what I mean? Basically in All Eyes on Me, basically saying, why didn't they kill me? Why did I have to survive? Why did I, from that perspective. And so now, when you deal with that, and you see this picture right here with him and his father when Tupac was in prison, and the smile on his face, that's all I'm paying attention to, right? Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Tupac. I think probably in a couple other pictures, but pointing at his father like, yo, this is him. This is my dad. It's got to be a touching thing. You know what I mean? For all of the people who understand what I'm talking about, like a lot of stuff that's just simply not your fault. You probably, Tupac at that particular time was too young to understand, whatever had happened between his real father, Billy Garland, and his mother at that particular time. But when in the time of need, not money, not materialistic things, but your presence, your support. When you found out where your son was and that thing in you that's in him, the thing that you share, the DNA, that thing that sparks in you as a father, right? Yeah. And then we go to Las Vegas, right? Mr. Garland was also in Las Vegas the second time that Tupac was shot, right? Right there by his bedside, So this wasn't somebody, and so you go with the 11 months, and he hadn't really asked Tupac for anything. It wasn't like he, you know what I mean? He came around, hey, let me get this, I need that, and Tupac was damn near at the height of his career, at the highest point in his career, if you will, from that perspective, when he was on death row. But you didn't see Mr. Garland around trying to hang on, trying to hang out with his son, right? But once again, when Tupac got shot in Las Vegas, Mr. Garland once again was right there by his son's side. Because at that particular time, Tupac was a grown man, and so when you deal with these facts, it's like, wow, so that's the part that I pay attention to the most. I don't really pay attention to all of the other stuff and, people saying, trying to reiterate what Afeni said. She has a right to feel the way she feels, like Mr. Garland has a right to feel the way he feels. That's between them. But as far as what we were able to witness and be made aware of publicly, these pictures, Tupac's statements for everything that he wanted us to know, the fact that Mr. Garland was there at the hospital in New York at Bellevue. He was there at the prison at Clinton Correctional Facility, visiting Tupac, as much as he possibly could while Tupac was there, because he needed that support system. You know what I mean? That's a scary thing, your first time really being in prison, in a maximum security prison. You need people there to reassure you, like, hey, you know what? I'm here for you, And I ain't just talking about the people that hung around you when you was, trying to, when you was getting money and you was shining and, doing shows and all of that. I'm talking about the people that, genuinely would care for you, as well as in the hospital at UMC, University Medical Center in Las Vegas, when Tupac got shot in Vegas. Mr. Garland was there. He wasn't there during Tupac's time of death row and, riding high and doing all of that, trying to get something from Tupac, right? And so for that, I would hope that when him and Tupac talked, and there's some things I can't really say, that me and Mr. Garland talked about, but I would hope that for Tupac's sake, before he passed, I would hope that he was fulfilled. You know what I mean? And I think that everything that's supposed to happen at that particular time, it happened. Mr. Garland coming into Tupac's life at that particular time, and for all the intents and purposes, what Tupac had thought his father was dead and so on and so forth, he knew the truth. And so therefore that part of the truth may have set him free. Like I know who my father is, you know. And like I said, if you've never been through that, I have. And so I that's why I can really speak on this from that perspective. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.